particular live, if I talk about, I'll be very, very honest. So, apologies. Like again, I'm setting up a lot of things. A lot of things are happening in the background. I just want to make sure that all the awesome students are getting all the required awesomeness which I'm expecting from this channel. Yeah, I'm audible as well. Now, here's a quick thing, guys. One quick update I have for you guys. Obviously, we have created separate groups, or I should say channel on Telegram for students who will be graduating in year 2023, if I talk about, and year 2024. Why? I want to make sure that all the kind of information which you're looking for is dedicatedly shared on those Telegram groups, if I talk about. So if you have not joined in, the link will be available in the video of it. So if you're graduating in year 2023, that means next year you should be joining that group, because we will be posting all the content which is relevant for you guys. If you're graduating in year 2024, that means next year, probably you're in third year right now. So obviously join those groups. I wish I had those kind of groups when I was joining, because obviously that would have helped me grow more. But obviously, again, no regrets. So in this video, what we are going to discuss, what are the resume writing tips as a student I should follow. Now, Vinash, why it is important, why the resume thing is even relevant when I have GitHub these days, when I have LinkedIn these days. So let's talk about it. First of all, are you aware what is the importance of resume? Because usually what happens when you're not writing a proper resume, your chance of getting rejected increases a lot, because a resume is kind of a way of you telling the person or the recruiter who is right now looking into your profile what you have done and what kind of a potential you have, what kind of a certifications you have done, what kind of a hard work you have done. So you have to understand one thing very, very simply, that you have to make sure that you're following everything as per your requirement. I mean, as per the criteria, or if I talk about in terms of prototype, or I should say, I mean, in terms of what kind of an image you want to build for that particular company, if I talk about. So you have to follow a lot of tips, if I talk about, and I would not say a lot of tips, but yes, you have to follow along a lot of things. And I've noted down a lot of things. Let me just quickly share with you guys, and I'll get started. Okay. Yeah, so I've just opened these slides which we have made. Now obviously guys, currently I'm not able to share the screen with you guys, because obviously the setup is quite different, but obviously you guys can actually get the hang of it, no issues. And let me just put my phone in the portrait mode so that I can see a lot of things. Actually, the thing is, I'm using two phones, so that is a weird combination if I talk about. Okay, so let's quickly get started with the first point. And the first point, let's try to understand what is a resume. So basically what happens, uh, when you want to actually showcase yourself, what you have done and what kind of capabilities you have, this is something you do from your resume. If I talk about resume is kind of a passive Avinash. So passive you. So currently, if you're watching live me, if you're right now live with me, and if I'm live right now with you guys, so obviously this is active. I cannot do anything right now. I cannot cook, I cannot clean my home if I want to, I cannot eat anything. Obviously I can drink water, and obviously I cannot talk to my friends, I cannot talk to my mother, whatever that is. So you have to understand, right now I'm actively present. Now if you have to be actively present, that means the other person who is going to who is the receiver, they have to be actively present. So you have to understand one thing: resume is something which actually helps you share your voice passively. Again, I'll repeat, helps you share your voice passively. So what happens when you're reaching out to a potential recruiter, they say, hey, I want to know about you, but I'm not actually interested in getting a call with you, I'm not interested in actually getting into a meeting with you, I just want to hear things from you passively. And if I feel like that you are the kind of a person whom I should actually connect actively, in that scenario I will be having a discussion. So first of all, you have to understand one thing very simply: resume is something which is going to help you, uh, what can I say? It is going to help you reach out to potential recruiters and speak what you are capable of quite actively, or I should say passively. Secondly, let's understand why writing a perfect resume is going to be very important. Writing a perfect resume is going to be very important because if you're not able to capture the audience, or I would say if you're not able to capture the attention of a potential recruiter passively, it will be very difficult for you to actually catch their attention, or I would say grab their attention and actually get the chance of getting hired there actively also, for a very specific reason. Because if you're not able to express yourself in the written format, how will you be able to express yourself in the verbal format? Now obviously you can say, no Avinash, I can do that better when I'm in the active format, but I'm not good when, if I talk about in terms of writing. So you have to understand, you have to write emails to your client, you have to write emails to your team leader, you have to write emails to your colleague, you have to express yourself why this product is not getting shipped, why there is a bug in the product, why you're not able to get it done today. So nobody is going to get on call with you every 24 hours. So you have to understand this is the important part of it. Secondly, obviously, it gets you chance to actually get noticed with the recruiter. So basically, what happens if you have a good resume, and if you have a perfect resume, obviously the chance of getting noticed by the recruiter increases, because obviously they will, within 10 seconds they will be able to analyze, okay, this is the person we are looking for. Then if I talk about in terms of the next point, obviously it helps you highlight the points which you might forget. So let's say if you have done something great in the community part of it, okay, that might be something which a company is actually they are actually quite looking for. So you have to understand, if you are going to mention all these things, if you're going to have your resume ready and it is going to be a perfect resume, then it is going to actually help you. And obviously the next point is it is going to actually set the foundation, or I should say set the tone for the interview, if I talk about. So whatever you want to discuss in the interview, if that is available in the resume, you can actually set the tone. If you have some weak points, if you have something which you don't want to you don't want the other person to know about, obviously that is something which won't go to a resume. So you have to understand these are the important points. Now let's actually understand about what are the important tips, or I would say what are the important things we have to be working on. So first point is, obviously you have to plan the content for the resume. Now what do I mean by planning the content for the resume? You're applying for a job where they are looking for Python developers. You have done just one Python project. How will you actually write it? How will you mention that you have the set of skill set, or I should say set of expertise, which are actually important for Python, or why you should be hired for Python? Okay, let's say you have worked in JavaScript. How can you actually mention, or how can you actually express yourself that you are actually capable of doing? So you have to plan it. It is not something you will just shoot the ball. You have to understand the potential recruiter is going to make sure they are going to look into it. And if you're not able to express yourself, learn about it. Look into the various resumes which are available on the internet. If you want, I can actually audit your resumes. Obviously I've created the various Telegram groups. You can actually go to those Telegram groups. If you are from year 2020, if you're going to graduate in year 2023, you should join that group. If you're going to graduate in year 2024, you should be joining that group. So coming back to the writing tips, the next point is, obviously you have to understand that your resume should have a proper structure, or I should say proper formatting. Why proper formatting is important? If a person is going to go through a resume, a typical resume, if I talk about, contains around 200 to 300, or maybe 400 or 500 words. Now in that split second, within 10 seconds, can you actually help the person understand your achievement, your goals, what kind of your strengths, if I talk about, and things which are going to make it unique, which are going to actually make it unique for the company. So if you can actually express them in that passive voice, or I should say in the passive format also, that is going to be great. So you have to understand, if you're going to actually make sure that your resume contains proper formatting, it is only going to help you, because lesser bold point you have proper indentation, you have proper bullet points and stuff like that. It is only going to help you, because potential recruiter does not have to go through every single line. And obviously guys, since this is a live Q&A, you can actually post the questions and I would be more than happy to help you and answer those queries. The next thing which we have to understand is a lot of this is a genuine mistake. I've seen a lot of people. they forget to mention about their contact number, they forget to mention about their email address. So make sure, if someone wants to connect with you, if you're going to give them the wrong information, your friend or someone else is going to get hired, because not because they have the proper skill set, not because someone is actually helping them out, just because you made a silly mistake. So the information in your resume has to be updated. Let's say you have achieved something, you won a gold medal somewhere, you were actually part of a community where actually maybe prime minister or chief minister or maybe local MLA or MP have actually congratulated you or maybe awarded you for that kind of a work. Do mention these kind of points, because if you are not going to do, it is going to take immense issue for you, and you will be obviously losing out a lot of things which you can discuss with the potential recruiter. Now obviously one thing which I have seen a lot of students are doing, which they should be not doing, is obviously in terms of usage of a bold formatting. A lot of people actually, they bold the words, they will underline that word, they will also make it like italic kind of a word, which is very difficult for a person to understand. Like, it may be irritating for some people, it may not be irritating for some people, but I would say keep it very formal and keep it very short and simple, so that what will happen, people will be actually able to understand what is going on with your resume, what kind of a skill set you have. Okay, now next thing which is quite important is you have to understand what kind of a resume you have to build. So if you're hiring, like if you're applying for a job related to cloud computing, if you're applying for a job related to programming, if you're applying for a job related to, let's say, consulting or something like that, go through the resume and include the important points which are there, because it is going to be very important for you. If you are not going to include like follow those kind of patterns, if I talk about, it is going to be like, obviously it is not going to be the rejection criteria for you, but obviously it may feel like that this resume is odd. So read and study the various resume which are already available in the on the internet, if I talk about, in terms of fresher resume, in terms of experienced person resume. So like, point them out. You won't believe, when I was actually applying, like I would say I apply for various companies just to test out if I have that skill set, if I'm actually worth hireable if something goes wrong. So what I do, I actually apply for various companies, I get the call from them also. Now what happens, if I'm not sure what kind of a resume people are building, it is a good possibility that things are going to get rejected. You won't believe, one of the person like who was working in the company, she suggested me that, Avinash, you should be making your resume like that, because your resume format is quite outdated. So follow the pattern, follow what is actually being followed in the industry, so that you don't miss out, so that you don't miss out. Now, obviously, the important point here is, if you're going to miss them out, you're going to lose a lot of opportunities, and if you're going to lose a lot of opportunities, your chances of getting hired are going to get decreased. Now, next point is obviously, like, we should be careful about the titles and the headings which we are using in the resume. Now, why? Because if you can express yourself in a very positive or a bold way, that would be great. Like if I talk about, we have seen a lot of people just copying and pasting the objectives, if I talk about in terms of title, if I talk about. So if your title sounds very dullish, if I talk about, it sounds very sad, if I talk about, I don't like how it will sound sad, but yes, if it looks very sad, or I should say pathetic, it is very difficult for you to get hired, because obviously the person will say, okay, you have not studied about this, you're not sure about this job, and since you're not sure about this job, that is why you're not applying here. So that is the problem. Now I have discussed one important point which I want to reiterate: make sure your personal details are shared properly, because if you're going to not include those personal details, if the recruiter is not your relative or your friend, obviously for you to get hired is going to be very difficult. Now, one question I usually students have is, what if I make a grammatical mistake in my resume? What if I make a grammatical mistake in my resume? What will happen? Will I be penalized for that? Will I be penalized for that? Or will I be not penalized for that? So I just want to be very clear for you. In terms of grammatical mistake these days, you can go to Google, you can go to various different websites, and you can find what is the right way of writing a statement, or I would say writing a sentence if I talk about. So you should not be worrying about that. You should only be worrying about making sure that your English is community. I mean, you can communicate in your English and you can express yourself. Right now, you can see I'm like again I'm lagging a bit because obviously I'm aware that I'm on live session right now, which is something I'm still learning how to be actually quite an effective communicator. But yes, this is something you have to understand. So please make sure in terms of grammatical mistake, I would not say that the person is going to actually give you marks on your grammar, but yes, it is going to give you a better impression if I talk about. Now, this thing which I would say is quite important. A lot of people have this question, should I include my image or not? A lot of people have this kind of a question, should I include my image or not? And for them, I would say that totally depends. But if you're including your image, make sure that is a professional looking image. It is not something where you are wearing a goggle, your hair are quite funny, and you're having piercing kind of a stuff. If you actually want to portray yourself as a professional, you have to look like a professional. So you have to understand one thing. If you're going to include your image, or I would say your portrait if I talk about, or maybe your passport size image, make it professional. Don't make it dull. And obviously, if I talk about in terms of indentation and various things I've already discussed, make sure your indentation is quite formal and it looks awesome. Otherwise, it is going to be very difficult for you. Now, obviously, I have few questions which students ask. So the question usually they ask is, does your resume need a closing statement? Well, closing statement is something that is kind of optional if I talk about, because it is not going to set the tone. Because if your first half of the resume is not effective, the closing statement is not going to make any sense. In the closing statement, what kind of things you should be looking, writing in closing statement, you should be writing something which is going to make a relevance between you and the company quite relevant. Let's say if you're applying for Microsoft, so you can say I'm quite passionate about what you guys are doing, and I've been using Microsoft or Windows kind of stuff from my early childhood days, so I'm quite passionate about what you guys do. Let's say you're talking about a company, like let's say if you're applying for Mozilla, so you can say I'm quite passionate about open source, and I've been using Firefox all day in my life, because open source is something which I live with and I breathe with. So the closing statement of your resume has to be relevant for people. The closing statement for not the people, the company, I'm sorry. The next question is, how do I write a simple resume? Well, obviously, there is no such thing as writing a simple resume or a complex resume. The only part where I would say, if you want to write a simple resume, keep the formatting very simple. Keep as minimum words as possible. Keep a simple font. Don't use any exaggerated fonts like we use on our Android devices. So make a use of a normal font which can be read anywhere. The next question is, what skills do I put on a resume? That's a very good question. What kind of a skill set should I put? If I'm a good swimmer, should I put? Well, if you have won something in swimming, then you should include that I won a gold medal in my city's swimming competition. Why? Because that is going to show you that you have some extracurricular activities as well. So do mention these kind of skills. So like, let's say if you have a unique skill and you have done something there, like again, don't put skills like, okay, I like reading. It does not help anyone. Like what? Like, do you read one book in 1 hour? It is not a skill. Okay, watching TV is not a skill. Watching cricket is not a skill. Add a skill which is actually quite worthful. If I talk about worthful, it could be uh, like uh, I can read and write in French. That is a very good skill, because if you're going to get a job, a company can potentially think, if you can actually read and write in French, read, write, and speak French. What we can do, we can actually, like, we have a project where we have French clients. Obviously, we can align you with them. So obviously, this is going to save us hiring a person who can specifically speak French or something like that. So do mention these kind of skills, which will actually make your profile quite unique compared to with everyone. Obviously, don't include the time. I like to read. I like to watch YouTube videos. I like to learn new things. Again, it does not justify for the company. And the final point is how to write a resume with no job experience. Well, I don't know why a lot of people say just because you don't have any experience does not mean that you're not deserving. You have to showcase. You have to showcase what kind of a skill set you can actually write. And actually, I just realized that it is a very good topic for the next slide, like how to write a resume where you have no experience. Where you have no experience. I'm just noting it down so that I don't forget. Okay, so maybe tomorrow or day after tomorrow we will be discussing about this. We will be having a dedicated live session on this. Okay, so obviously if I talk about in terms of writing a resume where you don't have any job experience, obviously include your internships, include something which you have done, include your events where you were participant of, include maybe an open source project where you have contributed. So a lot of stuff is there. Again, if you don't have any experience, that is just an excuse. It simply means that you do not have the path right now, or maybe you have not yet figured out things. So that is it for it, guys. Obviously, I hope you understood everything related to writing resume. Kind of a different setup. Obviously, if I have some questions, confusion, or some suggestions, I'm open for all the questions, I would say. But make sure that if you're actually applying for a job, like if you spend around 15 minutes to apply for a job, make sure your 5 minutes are you used or utilized while writing a resume which is crafted according to the requirement of the job description, according to the requirement or maybe the work culture, or I would say the goals a company has. Because if you can make it as relevant, or I would say as personalized, if I may, for the company or the recruiter, the chances of you getting recruited is going to get increased. So with this, I would say I'm open for any questions if you guys have. Obviously, currently I can see no questions are coming up, so I would assume that nobody has any questions right now. And obviously, guys, if you feel like that you have some suggestions, or if you want to do something, I mean, if you want some topics on which I should make video, obviously the comment section is the best section where you can actually put in all the questions or doubt or suggestions. So again, I would repeat, this is how you would be writing a perfect resume. And if you are graduating in 2023 and you're looking for content relevant for that, obviously we have created a separate Telegram channel for that. If you're going to graduate in year 2024, we have a separate channel on that. So please make sure, I mean the Telegram channel, so please make sure that you do join, so that we can make sure that in this particular year or next year or two, we are going to make it big and we can actually make our parents proud. So with this, Avinash Seth is signing off in this video, and I'll make sure that I'm coming tomorrow with a new topic, just because I want to make sure that you get hired and you get the job which you're dreaming for. Bye bye.